Yesterday, Football Manager announced the new headline features coming to FM23 in a 42-minute video. Today, I'm going to break that video down into something a little bit more manageable and go through all of the new changes, features, and additions to the game whilst taking a balanced and measured approach. I didn't want to rush this video out last night. I wanted to sleep on it and I wanted to try and come to some more balanced conclusions, because I think a lot of people came away from the video last night with the sentiment that I've tried to convey in the thumbnail of, I'm not too sure. If you've not seen FM's video and you want to watch it, I'll put a link in the top right of the screen. It is a long watch, but it's really nice to see how passionate the developers are about the game, and that's really nice to see because it obviously means they care a lot about the game that they make. So the biggest revamp to the game is in recruitment, which has had 4 major changes. You now have a squad planner where you can have a top-down overview of your entire team. You can rank all of your players, and your staff will use this data to help with the recruitment process in identifying weak or underdeveloped areas of the squad. Your players won't know their ranking in their squad, so you can put your star player as the 5th best player in the team, and he won't get cross with you for it because he has no idea what you rank him as. You can also add transfer targets to your planner, bringing players in from your shortlist to see what your team might look like if you can actually sign those players. You can also plan up to 2 years in advance, which means you can factor in the development of your young players. Scouting has also had some fundamental changes as well. Gone are the scouting completion percentages, and now you've got 4 levels of knowledge on a player instead. Essentially, if you leave your scouting up to your chief scout, they'll send your scouts out looking for players. A wide net is cast as initial reports come in, and they'll whittle the pool down, getting rid of the dead wood. You can set your own parameters for scouting, for example a 6'5" centre back, but you will be told of near misses of players who could make it but might just miss out on some criteria, like being slightly too short. That way you're not going to miss some players who could be amazing as they slip through the cracks. It sounds like the quality of your scouts are going to be really important, but personally I think I like to do a lot of manual scouting in Football Manager, so I think I might stick to the manual scouting a little bit more, which actually does involve using the sponsor of today's video, the OneFootball app. I like to use the OneFootball app to look for young wonder kids to see if they're actually playing football in real life, and if they're playing football in real life, that gives me an idea that they're actually going to have a really high potential. For example, if they're playing regular football in the top flight of their domestic league, probably means they're pretty good if they're doing that at 16 years old. And if you want to do a whole ton of scouting, you can actually watch live games on the app now, which is a really cool addition. So if you want to help me and my channel out, you can download the OneFootball app from the top line of the description for absolutely free. There have been some big changes to agents as well. Previously, you used to be able to ask an agent if a player wants to join a club, and they'd say yes or no, and how much money they want, essentially. Now you can start a dialogue with the agents, and you can say, well, actually, that contract looks a little bit too expensive. Can you bring that price down a little bit? So you can sort of pre-negotiate things a little bit too. You can also talk to your own players' agents about contract renewals as well, which is very handy, particularly when they don't want to sign contracts. Maybe you'll be able to convince the agent to convince the player to sign that new contract. And finally, for recruitment, it seems that recruitment meetings have been changed as well. It sounds like you're going to get 3 per season, but the context of them is all uniquely different. So if you first join a club, they're not going to try and ram some players down your throat to sign. It's more about setting up some scouting reports as to try and find players for the next transfer window, or potentially towards the end of a transfer window, but obviously that will change season on season. You're going to get a meeting midway through the transfer window where they talk to you about what's happened in the transfer window so far, what targets have you got, what positions have you filled in the team, who's been sold from the club, and what you still need to do. And if you need it, there's going to be an emergency meeting on deadline day as well. So let's move on to the match AI and animations, and it sounds like they've made some really nice quality of life updates here. Firstly, AI managers have been improved and should more closely resemble their real life counterparts in the match engine, although this quote threw me just a little bit.
Now our AI managers, they can select the right formation, they can select the right tactical instructions to hopefully go into that tactical battle with not just the human manager, but also the other AI managers.
It kind of makes it sound like previously managers weren't managing properly, which is a little bit concerning, but if anything, it kind of does highlight that maybe FM23 is going to be a little bit harder than previous games, so a bit more of a challenge. There are now more tactical tools, particularly when you're out of possession, to build more defensively sound and counter-attacking formations. Lines of engagement have been more simplified into low blocks, mid blocks and high press to fit in with more up-to-date football terminology. Given they've made quite a bit of a song and dance about this, I'll be interested to see how effective these are in the game, and particularly if the AI use them quite a lot and if there are ways around it. On the animation side, movement should be a lot more fluid, particularly with goalkeepers and players in the air. The next big thing they spoke about was the UEFA license. Of course, I'm going to mention the UEFA license. It's a big coup for them getting that UEFA license, particularly in the world of EA's. For them to get that is huge. As you'd expect, all the logos and branding were plastered all over the game, but a lot more stuff has been added that you won't just get from installing a third-party logo pack, such as team screens at the start of matches. You'll get to see the Champions League ball waved in the centre circle as the teams come out, and bespoke podiums when you win the trophies, and even dynamic sleeve patches on the shirts depending on what competition you're in. Also, the cup draw screen is now a full experience with an announcer listing things off and a dynamic social media feed at the bottom. As someone who will actually go and sit through all of the cup draws in Football Manager, because I'm a bit weird like that, this actually feels like a really big feature for me. I'd actually really enjoy this, so I'm looking forward to sitting down for 20 minutes and watching the entire draw. Supporter confidence is now a big part of the game as well. The fans are now much more involved in the game, and you can see the expectations, such as winning the club's big derbies, as well as a breakdown of the fans globally. The fans will have an influence on the board, and I suspect this will be stronger at smaller, well-supported clubs or teams where fans are incredibly passionate. Think about Serbia or Turkey, for example. It was hinted that fans might have hidden attributes in the game, which obviously affects how they affect the board. So I'm looking forward to seeing if that's true and how many good experiments we can make with that. That's going to be quite interesting for me. And the final thing they spoke about was the dynamic manager timeline, which is essentially as part of the season review at the end of the season, you'll get a timeline of notable events from across the season, and that's expanded on each and every year, building up our nostalgia film timeline of your save, which actually is quite cool. And they are the headline features all wrapped up, and I think a lot of people are going to come away from that not feeling particularly enthused. I think a lot of people will come out of that saying, like, where are the big sweeping changes to the game? Where are these massive new features? But I think we have to remember it's Football Manager, right? It's a game that comes out every single year for a sport that doesn't change. Like, you can't just add a zero gravity mode, for example. Like, it doesn't exist. It wouldn't be realistic, would it? The fundamentals that make Football Manager great are staying, and they make improvements and evolutions every single iteration of the game. Think about your favourite games, right? Like Call of Duty, for example, or Assassin's Creed. Yeah, the maps change, the stories change, but fundamentally, the game mechanics and the core values of the game are the same every single time, right? You're still shooting people, you're still an assassin. It's just the incremental improvements every single time in each different version of the game that get made. Although, Assassin's Creed has gone massively downhill since it changed to an RPG style. But let's not talk about that because that's not for this video, but I've not been happy really about it. I think the fact that it's branded as headline features is maybe the issue here for people, because they're not brand new massive changes, they're evolutions of existing features in the game. But that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all, because for me, when I'm looking at a brand new game, particularly an annual game like Football Manager, I look at what's announced and I have to say to myself, right, number one, does this thing make the game better than it was last year? And number two, does this make the game more engaging than it was last year? And I'll be honest, I think all of these headline features that they've announced do that. I think they do make the game better than last year, and I do think they add immersion to the game. So on that basis, I'm pretty happy. Recruitment with the planner looks a lot more immersive. Agents have been improved. I mean, I'll probably end up still doing my own scouting, and I'll probably ignore the scouting meetings, recruitment meetings as well, but they have improved them from last year, so that's good. The match AI and animation seem to be some good general quality of life updates. Obviously, it's not FIFA level graphics, which is what we all want to see, but it's still some progress from the clips I can see on the trailer, which is good. New tactical styles for better defensive and counter-attacking football. If they are implemented well and they actually work, then great. That's a fantastic addition to the game because it's adding more ways for you guys to play. The UEFA license, I'd argue it's not really a feature. I mean, it's great for them that they've got it because they want to show it off. It's a huge coup for them getting the UEFA license away from people like EA. And of course, they want to show that off. They want to try and implement as much as possible in the game with a license. They want to try and maximize that to its fullest. So I can understand why they want to show that off. To brand it as a feature is maybe a little bit sus. I don't know. I'm not too sure how I feel quite about that being a feature. But it's huge for them in terms of brand recognition. It's huge for them in terms of being able to get more licenses in the future with other leagues and teams, because they've got that legitimacy for having UEFA. Like, it's legitimacy for them to an extent. So I can see why they want to push that so much, but I wouldn't call it a feature, but it adds immersion. It adds immersion, which obviously improves the game for me. So it's a plus. Supporter confidence. I quite like this. It looks to add some more immersion into the game. Adds an extra level of dynamics to the game, essentially, because you've got to manage the board and the supporters at the same time. So It's adding something to the game, which is a positive for me. And the dynamic manager timeline, yeah, it might be a little bit gimmicky potentially at the end of every season, but it adds some immersion. And if you can like export that some way into like a picture, like a JPEG or a PNG, right, and you can put it on Twitter for people to see, that's so cool. You can then share your story properly with all the really cool milestones. So again, it adds an extra something to the game. It's a positive for me. So am I happy with the additions to the game? Yeah, I am. It makes the game better than it was last year and it adds some extra levels of immersion. Am I disappointed that they haven't mentioned things like a custom set piece creator that has been broken for the past few years? Yeah, I'm a little bit annoyed about that because that's something everyone's been crying out for a long time. Am I upset they've not added things like improving medical facilities, for example, to make that a bit more immersive? Yeah, but that might come in future editions of the game. And of course, these aren't the only features. They are going to be announcing more features in the upcoming weeks before launch, so there could be time for them to announce this sort of stuff down the line. They just didn't see it as a headline feature. But even if these features weren't in the game, would I buy the game regardless? And the answer is probably yes. I am quite biased probably because Football Manager is my favourite game and I will buy it every year and I'll play it every year. So of course I'm going to be biased, and I suspect a lot of you guys are quite biased in that regard as well, that you'll just buy the game every year because it's what you do. It's such a great game, it's your favourite game. The people these headline features need to appeal to are the new players of the game and the more casual player who will only pick up Football Manager every 3 or 4 seasons or so. And when you market general evolutions of the game, which to be clear I think do make some big improvements to the game as headline features, when the only new feature is Pro Squad Planner, for example, which I think it looks pretty cool. But when you do that and call them headline features and new players to the game see headline features and think, wow, headline, the connotations behind the word headline are something hugely, wildly new, like it's the tippity top of whatever it is, right? I think people will see that and they'll come away with that sort of sentiment. I tried to put the thumbnail of like, well, I'm not really too sure about this. What's the big reason for me to actually upgrade to FM23 this year? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, because obviously as a person that plays it all the time, I do think this is going to make the game better, but I think for the casual player, they're not going to be too fussed about these new additions to the game so much. Now, if you are one of those people that do want to get a copy of FM23, I've got an affiliate link with Fanatical down in the description. Fanatical are a Sega authorized retailer, meaning they get all of their Steam codes directly from Football Manager themselves. Right now you can use code FM23 TomFM at checkout to get the game for £32.05, which is about £4 cheaper than you get it on Steam. You get sent straight away a code to redeem on Steam, and then it just waits in Steam for the beta to launch probably towards the end of October, so you get beta access and everything like that. Essentially you get the game for cheap and I get a bit of a commission from it, so it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. And if you want to stay up to date with all of the latest Football Manager news, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. I'll bring all the news as and when it comes out for you guys to see, and I'll break it down hopefully in some balanced and constructive ways for you guys to have a good discussion in the comment section about. And actually there are some features that they didn't even mention in this headline feature reveal trailer that they have done in some other sort of teaser trailers, such as the squad matrix, which looks quite interesting. So I'll put a link on the screen right now for you guys to watch that video if you want to find out more about that and the secret trailers they've been putting out over social media.